All right, we're back, and this time you've really outdone yourselves.
Oh,
You've given us a whole mountain of Islamic texts, and they're all about Al-Fatihah.
the opening of the Quran?
Yeah, the opening chapter. And I gotta say, I'm excited for this deep dive.
Me too. It's such a rich topic.
It is. We're gonna try to unpack its significance, its meanings, really get to the heart of it.
And maybe even uncover a few surprises along the way.
Exactly. So think of this as your, I don't know, your crash course on one of the most recited passages in the world.
And what a passage it is.
Mm.
It's not just an opening, it's the opening. It sets the stage for the entire Quran, everything that comes after.
Mhm.
You've sent us excerpts that focus on specific verses, which is great.
Mhm.
But we also have some really interesting material on the different names Al-Fatihah is known by.
Okay, yeah,
Like, obviously, the opener, everyone knows that one.
right.
But there's also Mother of the Book, the Cure, the Remedy. I mean, it's fascinating.
Yeah. Okay, mother of the book. Now that one really piques my curiosity. There's got to be more to that than just a nice name.
Oh, absolutely. It points to this core belief that, essentially, Al-Fatihah encapsulates the entire Quran.
Oh,
Like, imagine a tiny seed, right?
okay.
And inside that seed is the blueprint for a giant oak tree. That's the kind of power, the potential we're talking about here.
Wow, okay. That's a really powerful image. And then we have the story, and I think everyone knows this one, about the companion who used Al-Fatihah to heal a poisoned tribal chief.
Right.
So we're talking about the cure, the remedy. Does that mean it's literally a cure? Or is there something, I don't know, deeper going on?
Well, that's the thing. The sources actually point to both interpretations.
Really?
Yeah. There's the idea of Al-Fatihah having a physical healing effect, which is amazing in itself.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also about this spiritual purification, this guidance you receive.
Okay.
Like, think about it. If you align yourself with the divine will, wouldn't that run about a different kind of healing?
Yeah, yeah. A deeper kind.
Exactly.
Okay, I'm starting to see how these names aren't just labels. They're like, I don't know, like keys unlocking different layers of understanding about Al-Fatihah.
I like that, Keys.
Yeah. So let's actually dive into the text now.
Yep.
Starting with that first verse. Alhamdulillah.
All praise and thanks be to Allah.
Exactly. Sometimes, I have to admit, I rush through those words.
It's easy to.
It is, especially in prayer. But when you actually stop and think about what you're saying,
Right.
they really are the foundation of, well, not just this surah, but our entire prayer.
It's true. And, the sources are very clear on this one point.
Okay.
They emphasize a key distinction between praise, hamd, and thanks.
Hmm.
So praise, hamd, is about acknowledging Allah's inherent qualities.
His perfection.
Right, his perfection as the creator,
Mm-hmm.
whereas thanks is directed toward his actions, the blessings he bestows upon us,
Okay. So it's about recognizing who he is.
and what he does.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. You know what? Speaking of recognizing his greatness,
Yeah.
there's that amazing story about the servant whose praise was so perfect it actually confused the angels.
Oh, that's one of my favorites.
I know, right? What
Yeah.
kind of praise could possibly elicit that kind of reaction?
Well, it wasn't just about eloquent words. The sources describe it as this servant reaching a level of ihsan,
Isa.
excellence in worship. He understood Allah's majesty in a way that even the angels hadn't grasped.
Wow. And that's what earned him that unique reward.
Exactly.
Okay, that story really makes you think about the quality of our own praise,
It
our own
does.
gratitude. I gotta ask, though. The Bismillah.
In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful.
Yeah. Is it part of Al-Fatihah? Do we recite it aloud in prayer or not? There's a whole debate about this, isn't there?
Oh, there is. A big debate.
Yeah.
We could probably do a whole deep dive on that alone. But I think what's really important here, what's relevant to our conversation, is to look at it through the lens of language.
Okay.
Like, let's unpack those words, Allah, Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahim.
Hmm.
They're not just names. They're windows into understanding his attributes.
Okay, so each one adds a layer of meaning.
Right. So you start with Allah, his personal name.
Right, setting the stage.
And then Ar-Rahman, the most gracious,
Which is about,
his universal, boundless mercy,
encompassing all of creation.
regardless of belief or action.
Right, right.
And then you have Ar-Rahim, the most merciful,
Yeah.
which is more focused specifically on his mercy toward believers.
Gotcha. And it's not just the words themselves, it's the order they're in. It's deliberate.
Very deliberate.
Yeah. It reminds me of that hadith where the Prophet Muhammad recited the Bismillah slowly,
Yes,
deliberately, like he was savoring each word.
exactly. And that's, I think, the key takeaway for all of us, isn't it?
What do you mean?
To approach the Quran, and Al-Fatihah especially, with that same sense of reverence. Like it's an invitation. Let those words sink in.
Okay, so we've covered the opening, the Bismillah. Let's jump into verse 5. Iyaka na'budu wa iyaka nasta'in.
You alone we worship, and you alone we ask for help.
It's that shift to the direct address, the you, that always gets me. It's so powerful.
It is, isn't it?
Like all of a sudden we're having this personal conversation with the divine.
You go from the more general praise of the earlier verses to this very personal declaration of faith and reliance.
Beautiful. And this verse, if I'm not mistaken,
Yeah.
it perfectly encapsulates the core principles of Islam, the Tawheed.
You have Tawhid al-Uluhiyyah, the oneness of worship,
Right.
and Tawhid ar-Rububiyyah, the oneness of lordship.
Okay, so it's acknowledging that Allah is the only one we worship.
But it's also the ultimate source of power, of sustenance.
Everything comes from him.
Exactly.
And what's so interesting to me is the order of the phrases. It's worship first.
Then seeking help.
Right. I feel like that's saying something really important about our relationship with God. It's not about, transactional prayer.
No, not at all. The sources are clear about that. True reliance, it stems from recognizing his authority.
Acknowledging that we're dependent on his grace.
It's like saying, I submit to your will.
And because of that, I trust you to guide and support me.
Perfectly put.
Okay, so now, verse 4. Maliki Yam Idin.
Master of the Day of Judgment.
Whenever I hear this verse, I can't help but picture myself standing before God on that day.
It's a humbling thought.
Very humbling.
Yam Adin. The Day of Judgment. It holds such immense significance in the Islamic belief.
Right, it's the day of ultimate accountability.
Where everything is laid bare.
Our actions, our thoughts.
Even our intentions.
And Allah is the true king, the Malik.
It's a powerful reminder of his absolute sovereignty.
It definitely makes you think twice about your choices.
It should.
I mean, the sources are just full of hadiths and verses that really emphasize this point, They do. That recognizing God's kingship it's essential to understanding our place in the world.
It's not meant to be a fearful reminder, though.
No.
No, it's about recognizing the true nature of reality. And when you do that, that awareness, it allows you to live with more purpose, with more meaning.
Okay, so we've talked about praise, submission, his authority. But there's another key theme in Al-Fatihah we need to touch on.
Oh, absolutely. Guidance.
Yeah. Verse 6, Idina asiyat al-mustaqim.
Guide us to the straight path.
It's interesting. It's like that personal plea meets this universal need for direction.
It is, isn't it? It's this acknowledgement that we, as humans, we constantly need direction.
We get lost, we get distracted, we veer off course.
All the time.
Yeah. But what does that straight path, what does it actually look like?
Well, the sources describe Surat al-Mustaqim
the straight path
as the path of Islam.
Okay.
Submitting to Allah's will.
Yeah.
But it's also about living righteously.
Okay.
Striving for excellence in everything you do. Following the guidance that's revealed in the Quran.
And exemplified by the Prophet Muhammad.
Right. So it's really this holistic path. Your beliefs, your actions, even your intentions.
And it's not just a one-time request, is it? I mean, we're asking for this guidance every time we recite Al-Fatihah.
You're right, which in the context of prayer could be multiple times a day.
Exactly. It highlights this ongoing need for guidance, right?
Yes. Life is a series of choices, big and small.
Right.
And each one is a chance to either stay on the straight path
or stray from it.
And by asking repeatedly for Allah's guidance.
We're acknowledging our dependence on him.
And reaffirming our commitment to his will.
It's interesting the wording is guide us. Not me, not you, but us. It's plural.
It is.
So there's this collective dimension to it, too.
Absolutely. You're not just asking for yourself. You're asking for guidance for the whole Muslim community.
For all of humanity, even.
Exactly. It's this reminder that we're all interconnected. We have this shared responsibility to support each other on this path.
On this path of righteousness.
Yes.
And then you have verse 7.
Right.
Where that path is contrasted with two others.
The way of those on whom you have granted your grace, not the way of those who earned your anger, nor of those who went astray.
It's pretty powerful.
It is. The sources really delve into this idea of, different destinies, different outcomes based on our choices in this life.
So the path of those who have earned Allah's grace.
Often described as the path of the prophets.
The righteous.
Those who lived in accordance with his will.
And then those who earned his anger, who are they?
Well, they're often identified as those who knew the truth,
Okay.
but rejected it.
Out of.
Arrogance, defiance. They chose to follow their desires, their ego, instead of submitting to divine guidance.
And those who went astray.
Lost in ignorance. Maybe they never had the chance to know the truth, or they were led astray by false teachings, you know.
It really makes you think about those choices, doesn't it?
It does.
They have consequences, both in this life and the next.
And Al-Fatihah, in its own way, it lays out this map of human existence.
It does, doesn't it?
It's a framework, you know, for understanding our relationship with God, our purpose in this world, and the ultimate destination that's waiting for us.
So much wisdom packed into just 7 verses.
I know, it's incredible.
Wow. We've covered a lot of ground here.
We have some pretty deep concepts.
But before we wrap up this part of our deep dive,
Yes.
what stands out to you most from what we've talked about so far? What resonates with your own, experiences?
It's hard to choose just one thing. Maybe the power of praise, the importance of acknowledging Allah's sovereignty, or just that constant need to seek his guidance.
Yeah, or maybe it's that realization that even a single verse like Al-Fatihah can hold so much meaning.
It's a whole universe in itself.
It reminds us that the Quran isn't just a book to be read, it's
a living, breathing source of wisdom.
Yeah.
Guidance, and we can tap into at any moment.
And that's where the magic happens, isn't it? When that knowledge turns into action, it becomes a way of being in the world.
It's not just about knowing, it's about doing.
Exactly. Al-Fatihah, with all its themes, the praise, the submission, the guidance, the accountability, it's not just a prayer to recite, it's like a blueprint.
A blueprint for what?
For living a meaningful life, a life with purpose.
I love that. A blueprint.
Yeah. So a lot to think about, right?
Definitely.
But we're not done yet. There's still more to unpack, so stay tuned.
It's amazing, isn't it?
That's what it is.
Al-Fatihah. It's so personal, yet it speaks to, everyone.
It's true. We've been unpacking all these layers of meaning, and it really hits you that this surah, it's not just about saying the words.
Yeah.
It's about living them, embodying them.
And one of the most powerful ways we do that, I think, is through action. Like we were just talking about, seeking guidance. But what does that actually look like, in our daily lives? How do we actually stay on that straight path with all the distractions and temptations around us?
Yeah, that's a good question.
It's a question that's been pondered for centuries, really, by scholars, by everyday believers.
And what do the sources say?
They emphasize that seeking guidance, it's not a passive thing.
Okay.
It takes effort, conscious effort. You have to be willing to listen to that inner compass, and then actually commit to aligning your actions with your values.
So it's not just about asking for guidance in our prayers. It's about
actively seeking it out in every decision we make.
Every single one.
Big or small.
Okay.
Recognizing those moments where you're at a crossroads.
Okay, yeah.
Pausing, reflecting, asking yourself, which path is the one that aligns with what Al-Fatihah is teaching me.
Yeah. Which one brings me closer to Allah?
Right.
And I'm guessing that takes, a certain level of self-awareness, like being honest with yourself about why you're doing things, what's motivating you.
You're absolutely right. And that's why the sources talk so much about purifying the heart. Removing those veils of ego, of self-interest that can cloud our judgment.
So when our heart is pure,
it's easier to see the right path, even when it's difficult.
So purifying our hearts, seeking guidance in every decision, it sounds like living by the principles of Al-Fatihah, it's a journey.
It is. It's an ongoing process.
Yeah.
You're constantly growing, constantly refining yourself.
But it's what makes it so beautiful, I guess.
Right. It's not just a set of rules or instructions. It's a framework for a life of meaning and purpose. A life that's always evolving, always moving towards a greater alignment with the divine.
Okay, I want to go back to something we were discussing earlier, the idea of Al-Fatihah being the mother of the book,
right,
containing the essence of the whole Quran. I have to admit, when I first heard that, I thought, how can 7 verses possibly contain all that,
It's a common question. A lot of people wonder that. And the answer lies in understanding that, Al-Fatihah isn't just a summary of the Quran. It's more like a distillation, like a concentrated form of its core themes.
Okay, so like that seed.
Exactly. The seed that has the blueprint for a whole tree.
So within those 7 verses,
you find the seeds of all the key concepts that are going to unfold throughout the Quran.
Belief, worship, guidance, accountability.
Social justice, mercy, compassion, It's all there.
And then as we read more of the Quran,
Those seeds sprout, they grow, they bear fruit. Al-Fatihah sets this stage, right? It gives you those foundational principles, and then you can apply them to, every aspect of your life, your understanding of the world.
it's like a key almost, unlocks the deeper meaning of the Quran.
I love that. A key.
Yeah. And the more you recite Al-Fatihah,
The more you reflect on its meaning,
the more you really internalize it.
the easier it becomes to access that deeper meaning in the rest of the Quran.
So it's not just about, understanding the words intellectually. It's about letting them change you, shape your heart, your mind. We've been on quite the journey so far, haven't we?
We have.
Exploring the names of Al-Fatihah, the meaning of its verses, how it can guide us. But before we move on to our final thoughts, I want to turn it back to you, the listener.
We'd love to hear from you. What's resonated with you most? What new insights have you gained?
Maybe you've discovered a new appreciation for those opening words.
Alhamdulillah.
Yeah. Or maybe you're feeling inspired to approach your daily life, your choices, with more intention, seeking that guidance every step of the way.
Or maybe you're just, in awe of the beauty of this surah.
Yeah.
Realizing that even after all these years, there's always more to learn, to uncover, to experience.
Whatever it is, we hope this deep dive has, ignited a spark.
The spark.
A desire to keep exploring Al-Fatihah.
To go deeper.
Exactly. Because we've seen how this short but profound chapter, it really has the potential to transform us.
Transform how we understand the Quran.
And how we live our lives.
And now, as we get ready to wrap things up, I have this question that's been lingering in my mind. If Al-Fatihah truly does hold the essence of the entire Quran, what does that tell us about the power of even a single verse?
That's a good question. It makes you think, doesn't it?
It does. It invites us to look at the Quran with fresh eyes, see every word as a portal to a whole world of meaning.
So as we move into our final reflections, let's hold on to that question. Let's explore that possibility that even the smallest act of devotion, even a simple prayer said from the heart,
Can have a profound impact, a ripple effect.
a ripple effect. Yeah. Wow, we've really been on quite a journey with Al-Fatihah.
We have.
It's amazing, to think about how much is packed into those 7 verses.
I know, just 7 verses. It really speaks to the power of the Quran.
Yeah.
Every word, every phrase, so carefully chosen. It's multi-layered.
Yeah, like we were saying before, it's not something you just read once and put away. You can revisit it at different times in your life and get something new out of it each time.
Absolutely. Each time you come back to it, there's another layer of meaning to discover.
When I first started studying Al-Fatihah, I was struck by how simple it seemed.
I know what you mean.
But the more I learn about Islam, the more I see the complexity there. It's like
An diamond.
Yeah, a diamond, each facet reflecting something different.
I like that.
And speaking of facets, one thing that keeps coming back to me is this idea of Al-Fatihah as a microcosm of the Quran. Like it contains the essence of the whole thing.
Right.
We talked about this a little earlier, but I don't know, I want to dig a bit deeper.
Yeah, okay.
What are some concrete examples, of how those themes we see in Al-Fatihah, how they play out in the rest of the Quran?
Well, okay, let's take the concept of Tawhid, the oneness of God.
Okay.
That's right there in the beginning of Al-Fatihah, right? Alhamdulillah,
Right.
all praise belongs to Allah.
Right.
And that idea, that concept of Tawhid, it's woven throughout the entire Quran. It's the foundation.
The bedrock of Islam, really.
Exactly. And then you have the theme of guidance, which is so central in verse 6. Guide us to the straight path. But it doesn't stop there. The Quran is filled with stories, teachings, parables.
All offering guidance.
All offering guidance.
Yeah.
On everything. Our personal conduct, how we interact with others, our responsibilities.
And what about the Day of Judgment? That's pretty prominent in Al-Fatihah.
Oh, absolutely. Verse 4, Master of the Day of Judgment.
Yeah.
And this theme, this idea of accountability, it pops up again and again throughout the Quran.
Reminding us
That our actions have consequences.
Yeah.
In this life and the next.
So Al-Fatihah, it's almost like a roadmap for the rest of the Quran, wouldn't you say?
I would say so, yeah.
Yeah.
Introduces those key themes, and then, they're developed and expanded upon in the later chapters.
Like it's giving us a preview, inviting us to go deeper, discover more.
And that interconnectedness, it's what makes the Quran so remarkable. It's not just a bunch of random verses thrown together.
Yeah.
It's this tapestry, carefully crafted, where everything fits together.
That's a beautiful way to put it. And Al-Fatihah itself It's so meticulously crafted, too. The order of the verses, the specific words that are used, it's all very deliberate.
Very deliberate. Sometimes we can forget that, I think.
How
We
so?
get so used to reciting Al-Fatihah, our daily prayers,
Right.
that we forget to stop and really appreciate the beauty of the language.
Hmm.
Like, take the way it moved, the flow, from praise to submission to supplication. It's like it's guiding you through these different states of awareness.
Yeah, yeah. And there's this balance between the personal and the universal.
Oh, absolutely.
It's a very personal prayer.
Expressing individual needs, hopes, fears.
But it also speaks to this shared human experience, this
Mhm.
need for guidance, mercy, forgiveness.
And it's that universality that allows it to transcend cultures, languages.
It's something anyone can connect with.
It speaks to that longing we all have, for meaning, for purpose, for something bigger than ourselves.
It's pretty incredible to think about the impact this one surah has had.
Billions of people throughout history.
It's cited in moments of joy, of sorrow, in times of peace, in times of war.
And that's what makes this deep dive so, so powerful. It's not just theoretical. It's about connecting with a living tradition,
Mhm.
tapping into this wellspring of wisdom that's been nourishing people for centuries.
So as we wrap up our time with Al-Fatihah, what's the most important thing you want our listeners to walk away with?
I think more than anything, it's that Al-Fatihah. More than just a prayer.
Correct.
It's a key to understanding the Quran, a guide for how to live our lives, a source of comfort when we need it.
Beautifully put. And I would add, I think it's also an invitation to approach the Quran with a sense of wonder, with curiosity, to really see each verse as a window into a whole world of meaning. Because the more we study the Quran, the more we understand its beauty, its wisdom, how relevant it is to our lives even today.
Absolutely. And, going back to what you said earlier, maybe, just maybe, even the smallest act of devotion, a simple prayer from the heart, can change things.
Have a ripple effect.
A ripple effect. So never underestimate the power of those words.
Keep exploring, keep reflecting, and most importantly, keep seeking that guidance. May the wisdom of Al-Fatihah always illuminate your path.